Hello and welcome and a very good evening. You're watching Blueprint Explosive Exclusive with me, Siddaramaiah. Now, for millions of young people today, life increasingly revolves around the scroll of a screen. Whether it's reels and viral challenges to endless notifications, social media has now become a daily habit for many, and specifically children, it's now become an addiction. Experts warn that excessive screen time is beginning to affect young minds, contributing to anxiety, poor concentration levels, sleep disruption, and growing mental health concerns as well. There are also fears that children and teenagers are becoming far more vulnerable to online influence, misinformation, bullying, and dangerous trends circulating on these platforms. Now, these concerns are pushing governments around the world to rethink how young users access social media. Australia took the lead, in fact, last year by introducing a landmark ban on social media for children under the ages of 16, the first such sweeping restriction of its kind. Since then, several other countries have begun exploring similar measures and followed suit, and now the debate has reached India. In the Karnataka Legislative Assembly, Chief Minister Mr. Siddaramaiah announced that the state plans to implement a social media ban for children under the age of 16. Meanwhile, in Andhra Pradesh, Chief Minister Chandrababu Naidu told the State Assembly that his government is examining the possibility of restricting social media access for children under 13 and that a committee has been formed to explore the possibility.
ಮೊಬೈಲ್ ಬಳಕೆಯಿಂದ ಮಕ್ಕಳ ಮೇಲೆ ಬೀರುವ ಅಡ್ಡ ಪರಿಣಾಮಗಳನ್ನು ತಡೆಗಟ್ಟುವ ಉದ್ದೇಶದಿಂದ 16 ವರ್ಷದೊಳಗಿನ ಮಕ್ಕಳಿಗೆ ಸಾಮಾಜಿಕ ಜಾಲತಾಣದ ಬಳಕೆಯನ್ನು ನಿಷೇಧಿಸಲಾಗುವುದು.
13 సంవత్సరాలు వయసు లోపల ఉండే వాళ్ళకి సోషల్ మీడియా బ్యాన్ చేస్తే బాగుంటుందని ఒక సూచన వచ్చింది.
Now let's also show you how Indian children happen to be suffering from addiction to the social media and how it's adversely affecting them as well. Now, this is a survey that's been conducted by local circles that shows that 95% of teenagers in India are now on the social media. Even younger children are logging in early. About 40% of kids between the ages of 8 to 12, as young as 8 to 12, are already using social platforms. Screen time is also growing. 6 in 10 children aged 9 to 17 spend nearly 3 hours online on a daily basis. That's 180 minutes. Parents are also reporting worrying effects. About 22% say that their child shows symptoms of depression. And increasingly, digital entertainment dominates free time. 37% of the parents say that OTT platforms are their child's favorite pastime. Now, social media may on the surface seem harmless, but research has shown that it can have some lasting impacts on young minds. Experts say that intense use can affect brain development, encouraging impulsive behavior and a constant need for instant gratification, while also contributing to a growing mental health crisis among teenagers. Studies have also shown that every extra hour that's spent on the social media raises a teen's risk of anxiety by around 13%. Addictive algorithms keep users scrolling longer, often leading to sleep deprivation and also digital addiction. Children under the age of 16 are more vulnerable to this kind of phenomena, especially to online harm such as grooming, cyberbullying, and even sextortion in some extreme cases, which while excessive, can fracture concentration levels and also, of course, affect mental health and school performance as well. Literacy levels also stand to be affected, as well as real-world social skills. Now, social media has not just shaped conversations. In several cases, it has also triggered dangerous consequences, from viral challenges like the Bhoot Jolokia Dare to mob lynchings fueled by fake news in places like Tamil Nadu, Assam, as well as elsewhere. Misinformation as well as online trends have repeatedly turned deadly. Authorities have also uncovered plots coordinated through messaging groups, including the 2019 plan to poison Temple Prasad as well. In recent years, the dangers have continued, from the Gurugram murder linked to influencer ambitions to suicides allegedly triggered by viral videos as well as online games. Now, these incidents highlight how the misuse of social media can spiral into real-world tragedies as well, perhaps the effect amplified with the use of AI too. Now, several countries around the world are moving towards stricter limits on children's access to social media. We had already mentioned at the outset the example of Australia, which has now initiated some of the toughest rules, setting the minimum age at 16 and implementing the world's first total ban without parental opt-in since December 2025. Malaysia has also set the minimum age at 16, making an e-KYC verification mandatory for all users from Jan 2026, which is earlier this year. France has passed a law setting the minimum age even a year lower at 15, with full enforcement expected by September this year. Norway is still at the proposal stage, considering the limit to 15 years of age and shifting from a parental consent model to a strict age-based restriction. Now, several countries also regulate children's access to social media platforms through parental consent model. In the United States, the age of consent is 13, meaning that children under that age need parental approval to use the social media. Italy allows access from the age of 14 with parental consent required for younger users. Denmark sets the consent age at 15, requiring parental approval for children between the ages of 13 and 15, while Spain, another country from Europe, allows access from 16 with consent needed for those between 14 and 16. Germany currently sets that limit at the age of 16, though the government is also now pondering the possibility of stricter social media bans in the coming years. During the AI Impact Summit here in New Delhi, the French President Emmanuel Macron made a very significant statement. He stated that he now hopes India, among other parts of the world, will join France in their effort to protect children from the dark corners of the internet.
There is no reason our children should be exposed online to what is legally forbidden in the real world. Our platforms, governments and regulators should be working together to make internet and social media a safe space. This is why, in France, we are embarking on a process to ban social networks for children under 15 years old. I know, Mr. Prime Minister, you will join this club, and this is a great news that India will join such an approach in order to protect children and teenagers.
Now, under Australia's social media ban model, several major platforms fall directly under these restrictions. These include platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, X, YouTube, as well as Reddit. These are platforms where user interaction, content sharing, and public engagement are central features to their functioning. However, some services have in fact been excluded from the ban. Messaging and utility-based platforms such as WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, Discord, Google Classroom, GitHub, Pinterest, and health apps are not covered under the aegis of this ban. Now, if governments introduce a social media ban for minors, it could be enforced through several mechanisms. One such option being considered is parental consent, where a parent links their respective ID to a child's account and approves access. Age verification could also play a key role using government ID checks, mobile SIM or telecom verification, or even face age estimation software. Platforms could face fines and regular audits if they allow under 16 users, while app stores may introduce age-restricted downloads and also require parental approval before minors can actually install these social media apps on their respective phones. Now, the debate over restricting social media access for minors is gaining momentum in several Indian states. Like we told you earlier, and we played out the bite as well, of the Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister, Mr. Chandrababu Naidu, who said that the government is considering a possible ban for children under 13. Goa is also studying Australia's model and exploring the possibility of introducing a similar ban on social media for those under the age of 16. And we've seen, of course, what Mr. Siddaramaiah of Karnataka announced during the budget session there. Now, let's take this across to our guest. We have Neha Gupta, wellness and mental health expert, joining us, and also Professor Himanshu Joshi, who speaks to us from Delhi as well. Ms. Gupta, coming to you first. Karnataka will become the first state to implement a ban of this nature here in India. We already see Goa as well as Andhra Pradesh mulling the possibility of coming out with some kind of a policy to that effect. Questions are now being asked by certain skeptical individuals, let's put it mildly, that implementing bans of this nature would be exceedingly difficult. You might talk about parental control, you might talk about KYC verification, but these are always susceptible to abuse. If parents happen to be watching something on their television sets at home and a child comes and joins in, if that is content for somebody suited above the age of 18, then isn't that already a violation for somebody who's less than 16 years old? That's one example that's being cited. What's your view on this?
Well, I firstly want to just say it's unfortunate that kids today are growing up in an algorithm society as compared to where we grew up in a playground, where we grew up with real life interactions. They don't have the access to that. And we've normalized social media. Now, while all these restrictions are very valid and everything has a downside. And I'll give a very valid example how you have speed limits for cars. It's not like people don't exceed those speed limits, but it creates a certain amount of accountability. So all of these things that we are talking about and the need for having these kind of policies is more at a grander scheme to create some level of accountability and something to be able to go back to. And in fact, then be able to use that as a benchmark to use when we are correcting our kids.
Absolutely. So it needs to be tried before it can, in fact, be dismissed as a suggestion that is not workable. So we'll have to, of course, wait and see as to how the implementation proceeds. But what's your own view, Professor Joshi, on this policy that will now, of course, be experimented in Karnataka, and we'll wait and see as to how the other states proceed to embrace it? Do you see certain inherent flaws in a policy of this nature?
I think a blanket ban on social media is far-fetched, because if we look at kids, social media is something which is an integral part of their growing up years, right? So suddenly saying that we'll not allow you to use social media is something which is far-fetched. I think what needs to be looked at is can there be some kind of restriction or a regulation on the kind of content that they view? I think all the discussion and deliberation should revolve around how can it be regulated for these kids and ensure that content which is not appropriate for them,
right,
that can be segregated from the whole of social media. Because if you look at the genesis of social media is bringing communities together, right? And there's a positive side to it and there's a negative side to it. I think putting a blanket ban would make the kids underground. I mean, they will find out ways and means to bypass that. And I think what we should try to look at is more use it in a constructive manner rather than a blanket ban.
Ms. Gupta, here's the problem. What's the point of a kid having access to a phone if that phone does not come with social media apps? That's one question that people will inevitably ask if such a ban ever comes to be implemented. And as far as OTT platforms are concerned, because that's also something that people have red flagged, now they also come with certain checks in terms of what's parental guidance, what's UA, what's A. Now, at home, how is it possible to even regulate all of that when somebody sitting on a sofa set might be watching something that's A content or UA related content, but then you have a child who happens to be in the same room, perhaps watching the same content as well, which might not be suitable in terms of accessibility to that particular individual. So there is a serious concern about implementation. And there is also a serious concern about access to phones, because what's the point of having access to a phone if you don't install certain apps in it that a child might be willing to engage with?
Well, I am going to answer in a different way. Technology needs to support childhood, but unfortunately today it's just become the default go-to. And I'm going to bring in something what neuroscientists say. We as adults, when we go to something like a slot machine and we enter in, we cannot stop ourselves from this reward, the dopamine that we get out of it. A small child, when they are getting instant gratification by logging into these things, getting those likes, and that is shaping how they are being validated externally, it's very difficult for them to know where to stop. Another thing is the prefrontal cortex, which is the initial part of our brain which develops our choice, which develops our reward, and which helps us develop how to make constructive choices, doesn't develop till the age of 20. As a result of that, we cannot really expect a child who's of that age to have healthy boundaries without parental supervision. Today, unfortunately, social media has just become like the go-to thing. It's become like the default setting which is where the problem is lying. The moment it's used wisely and it's used within limits, then it's acceptable and it has its pros. But unfortunately, because it's become the go-to and it just continues as the default setup, that's where the problem is.
Professor Joshi, we've of course heard what Mr. Siddaramaiah had to say, but will any such policy be published or be put out there in the public domain through some kind of a gazette notification without any punitive measures? The problem here is that, fine, you've announced that children under the age of 16 should not have access to the social media, and we'll implement that kind of a ban. But in the event that somebody is caught violating those rules, is there going to be punishment? And who do you punish? Do you punish the child? Do you punish the parent for the lack of supervision? Isn't that a serious grey area as well that needs to be considered? Because that is immediately tied in with the point of implementation as well.
These are all relevant questions which still need to be answered. What would be there as part of the policy? What happens if somebody, watches content? So there is a lot of ambiguity in terms of what would be the implications of this policy on the kids as a whole, because while we are talking about banning it or regulating it, there is not enough information in terms of what would be the role of the parent, what would be the role of the kid.
Correct.
Right? Because it's not just about one or two stakeholders who can make this possible. There is a role of the school. There is a role of society at large, right? So just banning it or announcing that you won't be allowed to use social media, I don't think that would go a long way. Important thing is we as parents, as those who are where the schools where the kids are going, the community at large,
Sure.
the peers, right? So all have to come together in terms of creating an ecosystem which can make this possible. And I feel that the companies offering these kind of platforms, right? They will also have to bring in age-appropriate designs, right? They'll have to bring in checks and balances in terms of what kind of algorithms they are using for regulating this use, right? So these are questions which still need to be answered.
A final question to you, Ms. Gupta. What if somebody tells you that all of us have turned out fine and we didn't even have social media when we were growing up? There was perhaps strict parental control and they managed to exercise enough influence so that we did not go astray, to put it very mildly. So it all boils down to parental control and parental supervision with or without social media. So why have a law at all?
Well, let me just tell you, as a trauma coach, kind of people who come to me today, people born in the 70s and 80s, our traumas were more about lack of parental expectations, societal expectations, bullying in school. But somewhere when we came back from school, the day ended, the bullying ended. Whereas for these kids, it continues 24/7 on WhatsApp chats, on the polls. There is no limit to it. Secondly, it creates a digital footprint. It just stays there. It creates that identity which just stays. So the harms that these children are facing are much more than what we faced. We blended in technology, but they are born into it.
Absolutely.
So their harm is much more, way more about it. And that's the reason the suicide rates today, which WHO says, 1 in every 20 kids is actually going through that.
Absolutely. The scope for harm is much greater than it was earlier. No doubt about it, Ms. Gupta. And also, thank you very much for your inputs as well, Ms. Gupta, as well as Professor Joshi. This is an evolving debate. We'll have to, of course, wait and see how the implementation now proceeds. Now that the policy in Karnataka has been announced, the consensus is let's not dismiss it out of hand even before it's been implemented. Many thanks to our guests for this very important intervention that you made in this evolving debate.